Teresa Golden.
Steve Caswell.
Michael O'Brien.
Lori G.
John Cutler.
John Eichman.
Jason Paraskiva.
If everyone would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two upcoming meeting dates, one on August 16th and one on September 6th. And it looks like we are up to date with approval of our minutes. So we're putting our discussion items first because we've got a few folks that need to recuse on a couple of our adjourned public hearings tonight. So if we could have Castelli Driscoll, two-lot subdivision on Old Hopewell Road.
Good evening, and thank you for breaking protocol and putting them in sooner rather than later. So if I might, we were here several months ago. We have a 48-acre parcel on the north side of Old Hopewell Road, just east of All Angels Hill Road, just before the creek, if you will. The owner, Kathleen Driscoll, is looking to subdivide a piece of the property for her daughter and son-in-law to build a home. So we're here looking to split 5 acres off of that 48 acres on the easternmost part of the property. Since we were here, there were some questions about wetlands, which I believe we had Mike Nowicki put together a small report that was submitted. We've been out there with the health department taking deep tests and perk tests, have not submitted anything yet for the septic system. We tried to have a field meeting with the County Department of Public Works about the lone driveway, and he didn't want to meet with us. He says just put in an application, and basically that's it. And pretty much that's it.
Any other changes to the plan itself since we saw this last?
Since this submission, the only thing that we've done, which we haven't done, some of Joe's comments regarding elevations for first floor basements, garages, things of that nature have been added. And a couple of other things. Again, Larry Lynn is the, surveyor of record, if you will. I'm here representing, if you will, I'm the architect for the house. But Larry Lynn is the actual record surveyor, if you will. So some of those comments went to Larry, some of the notes that had to be modified. I don't think he's made those changes yet. And he's in the process of, there was a discrepancy about who owns Old Hopewell Road. Larry Lynn, the surveyor, is suggesting when he surveyed this that Old Hopewell Road was still needed to be transferred to the county. Joe thinks that maybe it's already happened, so that's in the process of being worked out with the county. Certainly before this plat is signed, we'll know who owns Old Hopewell Road, if you will.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had the wetlands and buffers surveyed. Are there wetlands on this property or any buffers on the property?
There's none. Right? Is that a fair statement?
That's the findings of Mike
Yeah.
Nowicki's report. and
Yes.
No wetlands on the
And no
property.
buffer area?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay. Anything we need to go over, Joe? We'll start with you.
Things are still a little preliminary as far as, getting the grades nailed down, getting some more details about the driveway, but some of that hinges on the county DPW review, but that's in our letter. So they're
Is there
also...
a concern about the driveway or just this position?
No, it's just the normal thing that they would come out and give a permit for the location of it, look at site distance, and the driveway where it's shown does seem to kind of cross an existing low area on the property and something that on the aerial is a little bit of a drainage course. It's apparently not a wetland, but it is an area that water seems to want to pass through on its way to it. There is a culvert
It's a culvert
in
right.
the road too,
Right.
so.
There's an inlet right opposite Presidential Way, so then water tends to travel west to east. We'll probably be putting a culvert underneath that driveway. It's not delineated yet, but that's probably how we'll
Even,
take care
even,
of that.
even in the property going north and south, there's a little bit of a drainage that might pass across the pathway of the driveway. So you might
That's-
wind up having a culvert back there too.
I'm sorry, Joe, that's the wooded stretch, right?
That's correct, that's correct.
You're
This
coming
is
off the
all the
meadow?
wooded area, that's correct. Right about where the property line is delineated, Michael, is probably where she starts to open up.
So now, is the plan to like take all the trees down? or they-
Absolutely not. They chose to be in this area because they wanted to be buffered. So no trees are going to be taken down except around the house, and just in front of it is the septic system, and there's a little bit of a buffer area. It's kind of open. It's treed in the front, kind of open in that area where I'm suggesting with my little cursor there. Then there's a tree line. Then behind the tree line is where the septic is going, then the house, and the remainder remains untouched. They want that purposely, that's why they took, again, the right side of the lot.
Anything else, Joe?
Well, as part of that is the trees, the clearing limits, the disturbance limits is just something we asked to be shown.
Correct.
because-
Which we'll delineate, no problem.
But that's all I have.
Okay. Anything from
No, I was just
Secret?
concerned initially about the wetlands, but according to Mike Nowicki, there are no regulated wetlands out there, so I think we're in good shape with that.
okay. And site distance for the driveway, I'm assuming it
As-
seems fairly straight on the road there, or?
As
She's
you
with the-
mentioned at your last time you were here, there is a vertical curve to the
Correct,
west.
that's correct.
Okay.
The further that driveway is to the west, a little bit more difficult it is up until approximately where you were at the barn.
Right.
And that's not too bad, left and right, coming out from the barn area. But from probably just east of the barn to the property line, to the western part property line, it's a little rough, so that's why we put the driveway as far to the right as possible. We feel that, and we've asked Larry, the surveyor there, to get that information for the county as part of the submission to them when an application is put in for that driveway permit.
I would advise you try and pursue with the county as much as possible.
We'll
to see,
absolutely.
Because, that's
Is there any other questions or comments from board members? Michelle, anything to stop us from scheduling for a public hearing, and do we need to circulate this one?
No.
All right. We have a September 6th, September 20th, October 4th.
September 6th would be fine. Sure, if you have the availability, that would be
Okay,
great.
and you just have to make sure all the notices go out and everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to
But-
schedule for a hearing on September 6th?
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I've got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
September
much.
6th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll move into our adjourned public hearings now. The first one is for Fakori, two-lot subdivision on Kensington Drive and Dale Road. Michelle, I think I saw Mr. Martin out in the lobby. Thank you. Do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing for Fakori? I have a motion, do I have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And do you have a copy of your plan to put up on the screen? Oh, thanks, Michelle. I think the last time you were here, we had a plan from you, but didn't actually locate the house or building envelope, et cetera, on the plan.
We just had a map that was, that had delineated wetland and was signed off by the DEC,
Okay,
which I think you have in your packet.
Yes.
We then since have made a submission that shows the two-lot subdivision and, shows, in addition to that, of course, the wetland, shows the proposed house. We changed the configuration of the house a little bit, driveway, well, septic and all that.
okay.
So, that was up there. I think before that, we were just talking and not, I think you needed the updated plan, which you didn't have.
Right. All right. So with the updated plan, are all of the calculations redone? I think I saw a comment in one of the professionals, Joe, it might have been your letter, that it looked like is the building envelope
The
calculated?
ESL seemed like it needed to be updated to account for the wetlands and the buffer. Ernie and I talked about that some the other day. And the buildable area calculation also looked like it was affected by the new areas that are on the map currently.
Yeah, so at this point, I have nothing further to add. I think we need to go back and take a look at our calculations.
Okay. Did anything else, I know you've given us the repositioned house, that there was also some discussion about possibly having a shared driveway and other things like that. Has anything else like that changed, or do you still have
No,
two
there's
separate
still-
driveways
there's still
to?
separate driveways.
Okay,
I did talk to the DEC about the end of last week, and my contact there said that she's recommending a completed application, which means then it then goes to publication.
and is that for the well or for something else?
That's for the wetland permit.
And I'm sorry,
For the well or for disturbance of the buffer area for the house?
Everything.
Okay. Does that affect both lots? All right.
The one thing that we did do, we talked with the DEC, and I know the board had a concern about the fact that it was tight around the side of the house.
Yes.
The fact that that area is a lawn area. We asked the DEC, do we need to put the fence right on the buffer? And they said, oh, no, since that area is disturbed, in other words, it's mowed, it's maintained, that you can run that fence out into the yard. So the plan that you have reflects that. And that would be reflective, that would be part of our permit.
Okay, so part of your permit would be to request the ability to continue to mow in
Well, up to
the
the
buffer
fence.
area
Up-
where it's mowed
Up
today?
to the Up to the fence.
Okay. And that's area that is already mowed today, correct? There's no addition, you're not proposing going further into
No,
a
no,
buffer
no.
that's?
Matter of fact, it doesn't even include all of it, it's only a portion of it.
Okay,
So it gives you a little more side yard
okay,
and a little rear yard for that matter.
okay. All right.
But even though you can mow there, you still can't put any kind of a deck or a pool or anything like that there, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
and I apologize, this is not ringing a bell. Have we gotten this? The latest one with the,
Yes.
pardon?
Yeah.
When did it go out?
I've got it
Came out about-
July 18th.
July 18th.
18th, okay.
The Monday, I think.
Yep,
That's, okay.
here it is.
Thank you, okay.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay. Anything,
So the real question is whether or not there's enough area, buildable area, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's kind of the crux of my current review letter is how those calculations work out. So it's something, I scaled from the drawing, so it's not as accurate as Ernie could maybe do them. So I thought maybe we could let him take another look at it and get back with us.
I just want to make sure if there's any other issues that need to be addressed, that we try to get everything out. So, Joe, that's,
Yeah. Well, we mentioned the well, both wells needing a permit and the side yard needing a permit.
Well, there's only one well, Joe,
Okay, right. The new well, right.
and that's part of our DEC application.
the other well you're just using for the house, but you're not changing the well at all, other than just the piping, right?
The lot that feeds the current house will be used for the new lot, and then we'll drill a new well for the existing house.
Okay. All right. Anything else with traffic? Nothing else? Michelle, anything else on your? Okay, so really, it's just making sure that, we'll open for public comment in a moment, but it's definitely making sure that you have the right buildable areas and all your calculations updated then with, now that you've got the final, plat in front
Right.
of us. Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions or comments from board members, do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak on the Fakori application? Just ask that you come on up, I'll have you sign in at our clipboard, and then the first person who signs in can come right to the podium. Thank you, Michelle.
Neighbor, Michael
I just,
Gentili.
we need to have you come up to the mic.
I'm sorry. Okay? Got me now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, my neighbor, Michael Gentili, is out of town with his family. He's been working with me on this. So he asked me to go ahead and do what I have to do. I've got a number of excerpts from the town code that I thought would be worth mentioning. This is a definition section. This is in, oh, wait a minute. This should be, can't show. Doesn't show up. I don't have enough oomph in this to make it. It doesn't show. Is there any way to turn the lights or anything?
Yeah.
Can't.
There you go.
Just a little better. It's hitting the wall, but it's, oh, there it is. Okay, it's working now. Okay, some definitions here in terms of what wetlands are. They talk about hydrophytic vegetation, hydritic soils, wetland hydrology. There's an awful lot of information in the town code, and I want to get through this and cut to the important, the salient parts. Here, they have codes that deal with an acre, half an acre or more, and the requirements for the wetland shall mean the total of the wetland, not just a portion of applicant's lot. And thinking back when I first moved here in '79, the fellow across the street told me he couldn't subdivide, and it may have something to do with this particular part in the code. And 3.1 acres of the original wetlands may be why they couldn't do it. He wasn't permitted back in '79. And there's no record, unfortunately. It must have been done verbally or whatever. Now, there's a buffer area that's involved. The closest point is 4A, which is a kind of a spike. If you draw a 100-foot circle, it actually overlaps the septic system. And you're going to have to do some filling in this region. Now, Again, that 100 linear feet is what's important. What I want to do is refer to a previous presentation I made back in May, and you've all got copies of this. What happened was there was a survey that was done back a year ago, May. A fellow named, who was it, Russell Johnston, I guess. And he put out some flags, and we showed the last time I spoke that when the flags were replaced by the DEC, this time something was missing. There was a plan, and we had this diagrammed in photographs in the last presentation. I have another copy with me. I think Pam's got a couple extra.
Just
you
for,
want-
but to be very clear, the DEC has now signed this map and has confirmed these wetland flags and this
The
boundary.
flags are confirmed, even though they were missing.
confirmed.
It's really interesting because they are linear from east to west, and yet the photograph shows a couple of them are north to south. So you're saying that the flags are where they're supposed to be? Okay,
The DEC has signed the map,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
right.
All right, it's just inconsistent with what we saw in the past. This is the little spike here from the wetlands, and if you draw a 100-foot radius about this, it does intersect with the septic system, so it's supposed to be 100 feet away. I have some more to say about this. I've got this diagram or this plan a little bit further down in the presentation, but I've got more to say about that. Now, buildable area. This is all, again, this is the 194-3 definition section. And what's interesting is how you define the buffer. And the question is that buffer considered to be sensitive, and how it enters into the calculations? I think it is, even though some calculations don't incorporate that. And I'm going to mention a little bit more about that later on. You can go back and do calculations and come away with you need 32,000 square feet to put a house in. And apparently it's more according to that routine, but I'm not so sure that works. Minimum,
That's what what was mentioned in our professional's comment letter, that the ESL or environmentally sensitive lands needed to be recalculated based on the
precisely, that's
new
probably, I'm just questioning
delineation.
whether or not the buffer should be included. And I think it is a sensitive area. So even if you go through the calculations, the way we work them out, and we'll see what the professionals have to say, it's supposed to be less than a half an acre as documented by the submitted plat. Now, these obviously have to be confirmed by the pros. Speaking here not as a surveyor or a realtor, but as a resident, and I have to live with this. Now, I did some digging, and I talked to the people in Albany at the health department. Pam's got a copy of this too, and the website is there. It's a little bit of a nuisance to download this son of a gun because it's over 200 pages. I gave up and discussed it at one point, and I had a PDF shipped down to me, but it did open up, and it's about 200 and something pages with all kinds of documents. I think this is very interesting. When wastewater treatment systems are located upgrade in the direct path of surface water drainage to a well, the closest part of the treatment system shall be at least 200 feet from the well. So the new house is going in, you have the SDA here, that well is downhill by several feet. So I'm saying is, they talk about a 200-foot distance. This is what's mandated by the health department. They've only got 100. This can be documented. I'll show you some of the information that I've got. This is from page 154 on that document. It took some digging to find this thing. But if you read the fine print down here in table 2, it says, and I had to resort to a screen capture program, so if it's not quite as clear as you would like, I'm sorry. But I got it on the screen. When wastewater treatment systems are located upgrade in the direct path of surface water drainage to the well, the closest part of the treatment system shall be at least 200 feet away from the well. All right, that's in the handbook. Now, I asked and was given very kindly a couple of photocopies of the two ends of the map here, one with the house, the proposed house here, and also the scale. What I did was, on one copy, I literally raised it out and put it right here. So they had it all on the same scale, and these numbers are accurate. The distance between a well, which is here, all the way to this septic system is 100 feet, and the handbook says it should be 200. Now, a couple of other things that are a little bit odd. I still question the positioning of these flags, in spite of what you said. The interesting thing is the way this buffer follows the outline for the wetland. You've got that spike in here, and that's going to have to be filled in at some point or other. You'll have to get some sort of a variance or permit to do that. The other thing that's rather interesting is, the first thing that struck me is when I first saw this map, they have this fence around here, actually delineates where the buffer is. There's no backyard here, and this is the front yard, there's a septic, that's about it. What's interesting to me is now they break here and head north for a ways with the rail fence. I believe, in spite of what I've heard tonight, that is supposed to follow this particular line here, okay? And it's rather interesting that there would be a fence to protect the buffered area. Why would that have to be there? Because it's sensitive. If you put a contractor in here and he starts digging holes and he goes into this particular region, or even over here, he's disturbing the buffered area, and that's not permitted. In addition, when construction starts, you should have some independent inspector come by every week or two to make sure they're not tearing up the buffer. Again, I'm just bringing this up to your attention. And just one more or two more points I want to make, and this is the last foil anyway. There's two houses in my neighborhood right now that are up for sale. Number 45 Kensington Drive, which is two houses down south from the proposed division. There's another one on Dale Road, number 43, that's up the street, maybe about 6 houses up. Both of those houses failed their water tests, okay? They have coliform bacteria in them. And both of these houses adjoin the wetland, okay? Well, my question is that contamination local to those two houses, or is it widespread through the wetlands? That's something I'd really like to know. And are we going to add another septic system to this? And how do we find out? Immediately south of this house, there's a strip of land that's owned by the town of East Fishkill. And I wrote a letter to you people about a week or two ago. And there's a well there. And it's been monitored in the past. I've seen trucks come and pull out samples. I've talked to these people. They would give me absolutely no information as to what they were doing. They were sampling stuff in the well. I was an IBM employee, and I went internally and asked for information. I could get absolutely nothing. So since it's town property, can you go in and test to see if this well is contaminated, in which case it might lead us to understand where this fecal bacteria is coming from? Okay, if that's the case, do we really want to put a second septic system, another septic system adding to the system here, okay?
I'm sorry, Mr. Dombrowski. You're certain it's fecal contamination?
Coliform, okay? That's coming out of these both houses. That's what they have. They have the reports. If you really want me to, I can go talk to my neighbors and see if I can get a copy of the report. Would that be helpful?
Okay. Probably should be part of the record, right? I mean, there's.
What do you think? I mean, you tell me.
Again, ultimately, this is a health
I
department
want to just say
matter,
this is,
ultimately.
Well-
thank you.
Yeah.
Just so that you know, the separation between well and septic, the potability of the water, et
Yep.
cetera, is all the purview of the health department.
Okay,
So that's something that our approval as the planning board would be conditional upon the Dutchess County Health Department approving this plan as presented.
okay, I understand that then.
And the health department does have requirements and test requirements and things like that.
Yeah, the reason I'm very interested in this, because when I moved here in 1979, the lot next door to me was vacant. Cronizer came in a year after I moved in, and he brought truckload after truckload after truckload of fill. He brought that property up 3 feet higher than mine and put a septic system in. A family moved in there of 5, 3 kids, 2 adults. That lasted about 2 years or so between the sewage, and I'm sure they had a washing machine going there 5, 6, 7 days a week. Septic system couldn't handle it. We had wet weather. And what happened is I would go out and I could smell things. Now, there's two parts to a septic system. There's the tank itself, which is an anaerobic process. There are bacteria in there that destroy the sewage. And then it passes out into the leach field, which is now an aerobic system. You need oxygen from the air. If the leach field is inundated with water, and that's what I'm concerned about because we're in a wet area, that breakdown will not occur. What happened in my neighbor's property is the leach field was so full it could only go sideways. Okay, I went to the health department, I complained to my neighbor, it did no good. There was no visible flow, but it was seeping out. Eventually, the ultimate happened. There was no place to water to go anymore. Leach field was full, the tank was full, it went in the house. When that happened, he had to tear out the whole system and put it together the right way. He eventually moved, and I have a very lovely couple living next door. They're retired, they don't make any demands on the septic system. But I've seen this up close and personal, that's why I'm here tonight. So anyway, so when you consider the approval, think about all the details, and thanks for the suggestions about the health department. I will pursue that. The area to contain the new SDA is known to flood. SDA is known to flood. There will probably be extensive amounts of fill required to bring this thing up. Again, that'll set the SDA even more above the well. In the end, the bottom line is you make the decision. I've told you what I know. But even if you do agree there is a proposed subdivision that can be accommodated, my question to you is, should you do it? Okay? That's my question. Anything else that, no? Is that it? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ernie, I'll just have you come on back up for a moment, and then we'll call up anyone else who would like to speak. Michelle, with regard to the buffer area, oh, sorry. Sorry. No, you're fine.
It's back on.
Ernie, what I was going to say, is, with regard to the buffer area, I had the same question. My impression was that the buffer area should be sort of a smoothed line that would be 100 feet from all wetland areas, all wetland points, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to really look at the new map, but I think it still is coming to a fairly sharp point.
Well, I think
So-
at the last meeting, we spoke about that, and that was a real concern of the board. And there was a concern, first of all, is there enough side yard?
Right.
And was there going to be enough front yard as well? So we talked to the DEC. It's not uncommon. I mean, first of all, with the gerrymandered shape of that buffer, you're not going to take a fence and bring it in on the spike. I mean, I think the board even said, we don't want to see that. So what we did is we spoke to the DEC. They said it's not uncommon to have fences which are typically on buffer areas, and if you know from other projects that you have looked at and reviewed, that's a pretty common practice. So what we're doing is we're taking it and just kind of cutting it through the field on a nice even swing.
So, I understand that. Michelle, I just, again, so let's take a point, and to the gentleman's point, if you put the 100-foot radius around it, you would put a 100-foot radius around this point, and there would be areas that are not currently labeled as buffer included in the buffer on this map.
Right.
So what I was looking for was, even though the wetland line itself has this kind of sharp edge to it, my expectation was that the buffer would be the smoothed edge that in all points was at least 100 feet from the wetland, not sort of running parallel to the wetland and following the exact path of the wetland, but so that every point was at least 100 feet, because there would be places not in the buffer right now that if I stood and I measured to that point, I'm within 100 feet of it.
Correct.
Ernie, is that making sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I'm trying to understand, what is your point?
So I'm going to just draw something on the map.
Well, it's not
Yeah,
that, I'm trying to
The closest
understand.
point on the fence would be 100 feet, not that.
I'm not talking about the fence right now. What I'm talking about is the actual buffer line that you've drawn has a sharp edge to it, but typically the buffer lines would not have a sharp edge, even if the wetland itself has a sharp edge. right? Because you always need to stay 100 feet at all times away from that wetland line. So your buffer doesn't do that right now. The way you've delineated the buffer doesn't do that right now.
All right. So,
This, see how this spikes? If I was right here, I'm within 100 feet of that point. So what I'm saying is,
On either side of the spike.
on either side of the spike, it should be kind of should actually follow the arc of a circle,
It's a consistent, not an average, 100 feet. I
right?
think that's what you're saying,
A minimum of 100 feet.
throughout.
so I'm trying to understand, are you saying that?
So if you want to, you go ahead, just step up for a minute if you don't mind. I'm going to show
No,
you what I drew.
I know what you're saying. Are you saying that you want the fence in a different location?
I'm not talking about the fence. I'm
Okay.
talking about the buffer as you've shown it on the plan.
Right.
Is not 100 feet away from the wetlands at all points. There are places that are less than 100 feet from this part of the wetland that are not currently included in your buffer area.
Right.
So I want your buffer line to be accurate. The fence line, I understand, because you're going to the DEC and you're asking them for the permit to be able to mow within a fence line that you agree is going to encroach in a buffer, but it's in a buffer area that is currently already disturbed, or I don't want to say disturbed, is
Well, it is. It's because
Currently mowed.
it's actively and regularly maintained.
mowed, right. So, and then I want to be careful about that. I mean, I believe it's only mowed, right? There isn't gardening here, there isn't any sheds or there's no other appurtenances or anything to the property, so.
Could be, yeah.
I would like to make sure that we have the buffer area accurate, and then I guess Joe and Michelle, to come back to, Joe, your original point, is the buffer area included in both the ESL and the building envelope calculation, or is it only in one or the other?
The way it should be done, and because it's a DEC wetland, the buffer gets factored into both calculations, so it should be deducted as if it was the wetland proper.
Okay, so
That's
it's
how the
important that
definition
your
reads.
buffer area is adjusted to include that land before you do the calculation. Okay. I think we mentioned it last time, but we didn't actually put anything on the map. We just need to make sure that at all points, there would be no place you could stand on the property that would be outside the buffer and still less than 100 feet to some point in the
But
wetland.
But I remember that conversation quite well. The concern was, and I forget who brought it up, he says, you mean you're going to have a fence that's going to follow that irregular shape? And I said, no, it would be something that's consistent, because the board also they wanted, because I think one time we had 12 feet off the back corner of the house.
Right.
So by doing this, we have more of a side yard.
You
but I
have something that-
understand
you have something that
you
looks
understand
consistent.
that the comment letter from our professional required us to do, not us, I'm sorry, you as the applicant, to make sure that your calculations are accurate for environmentally sensitive lands, or ESL, and for the building envelope, which has to be adequate in both lots to be able to do the subdivision.
Right.
So what we're saying is, before you do that recalculation, your buffer, as currently delineated on the plan, is not accurate. You need to make sure you have the accurate buffer line that follows 100 feet away from that wetland in all places. And right now, the buffer has a spike where you could actually be in part of that, and you'd be with probably 70 feet from the wetland, from that one point. You have to make sure that you're at least 100 feet outside it.
Well,
Which
I'm
is gonna run right
following,
into the
I'm
septic
following
and
with the
everything
D.
else. The way you're saying it, right?
Right, which may require permitting, or regardless of what it requires, to do these calculations, we have to make sure that the buffer area is accurately delineated, so that you can actually calculate what is that buffer area, what's the area of that buffer, so you can add it into these calculations.
And then, it's my understanding also that the highway superintendent weighed in on the driveway and wanted a shared driveway. But I don't actually have his comments in front of me. Do you have them, Pam?
I saw it, I think it was because the two aprons were very close together within the right-of-way. He was asking if it could be one entrance. Did you receive those comments from the highway supervisor?
We met with the highway superintendent, had to be 6 months ago, and he was fine with it. I don't understand.
Okay. Was that before you flipped the driveway to the other side of the house?
I think that was before that.
Because I think the first time we saw this, the two driveways had a fairly decent separation between them. Now they're right next to each other, so he's
Well,
just suggesting.
Originally, they had driveway to driveway, you had 20 feet. I think now you got 12.
Yeah. We've had other plans where the,
You don't
even
have 12
just,
according to this, Ernie.
I'm sorry, Scott?
Center line.
If the driveway's 12, you don't have 12 between them. How much?
6 feet.
I know I saw that comment from the highway super.
Yeah. We have a copy of it here. We can make sure you get a copy of it, but it's very simple. It just says, the highway superintendent recommends one shared driveway on Kensington Drive for proposed lots 1A and 1B. And again, I think that's just because some of the location of the house changed and the driveway location changed from the original proposal. Scott, I think we've had some of these where we actually just have the apron is a shared apron, but the two driveways are separate. Is that correct?
Right, you would share the apron and they would.
It's not like you have one driveway going all the way up to the house. It's down towards the road where the right-of-way is, that you just have a shared apron so that you don't have two cars sitting right next to each other. Does that make sense? Okay.
Well, we can make that one big apron for that matter. And keep the driveways right where they are.
DOT has a standard for that, yeah.
Yeah. They'll be separate as soon as they're on their own property, but they're typically shared when they're that close together. All right. I think there were some other comments that were really specifically regarding your approval with the health department. Do you require a special permit to be able to have the well and septic only 100 feet apart when the septic is above the well, or is that?
I think in one of our submittals, if you remember, the board actually asked us, would you consider, rather than drilling a new well in the wetland buffer, happen to get a permit for that, would the health department consider utilizing the well that was there? Because our original plan that we submitted, that well was going to be abandoned. We went and we talked with them, and the requirement is, it's 100 feet, it's 100, if the well is uphill, it's 100 feet. If the well is downhill, it's 200 feet. However, if you're not in the direct line of drainage, then sometimes they give variances for that.
Right.
So we did have that conversation. I believe in one of my submittals, I addressed all that. I'm sure you've all read that.
I think so.
Okay, but we're in public hearing right now, so the public may not have the same knowledge that the
No,
board has, so.
You asked me a question, I'm
So
responding.
yes, you're asking the health department to accept the 100-foot
And they have.
separation as
Otherwise, we
adequate.
wouldn't have went any further.
That's
yes.
fine, okay. I just want to, I'm trying to clarify and answer the
That's-
gentleman's question.
And that's why our permit application with the DEC is for one well and not abandoning a well, drilling 2 wells.
Right. Okay,
There's less disturbance.
okay. The fence in the buffer area, Michelle, is there anything that you would recommend looking at the current fence positioning or anything that the board should be considering? I mean, it is a mowed area right now, so it's not disturbing additional wetland buffer.
But because it's a mowed area, could be subject to fertilization and things like that, which you don't want near a wetland. So especially closer to the road, I'm wondering whether the fence should come closer to the, further away from the
I think the idea is to prevent as much disturbance to the buffer as possible. I mean, we've been working with DEC on projects that are town projects, and they're actually making us remediate buffer areas that have been damaged or wetland areas that have been damaged. Even though they're lawn, they're asking us to take fill out and let them be reclaimed back to wetland. So I think the best idea for a wetland is to let it be a wetland, because you don't change the drainage and you end up with other issues, which you see often on lots that are built in wetlands. And I think that that's
So would you
That's
be
the reason
suggesting
why
to
there's
to
rules
more
about
square-
building in wetlands.
To more square off the fence, so don't kick it
I
so
think
far out to the
you
side, pull it in
should keep
closer?
the fence out of the buffer as much as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you made the fence more rectangular, you'd be, if this is the fence line, you'd be pulling it in closer to the septic line, which would run along your buffer, and maybe just square it off a little back here. It would keep folks out of the buffer. Is there anything else you would recommend as far as that goes, or is there anything, I think sinking fence posts into the buffer is probably more invasive than maybe doing boulders or something like
Right, I
that.
mean,
So
there's other options. We've also had, we've also put boulders, we've had, markers that just say it's a wetland along the line, but those would be low and might not be noticeable enough. So, I think probably either boulders or a split rail fence in this location, and that's typically what we do.
And are you proposing a split rail, or are you, right now?
Typically, that's what we represented to the DEC.
Isn't that under DEC jurisdiction, because they're getting permit to build a well?
The whole thing is,
So we can't change it, DEC wants a
if
fence.
have they specified a fence for you? Did they tell you they wanted a fence?
We just said split rail.
And that's typically what they do, is split.
I think it is
or a fence
typically
of
what
some
they
sort.
ask for.
Yeah, Mayor Corey, the owner, I did talk to them. This split rail, they said, as long as you don't bring any machinery and you dig it with a hand post, and they said that you don't require any permit or any more permit for that fact, so.
Okay,
And so it was split rail that we discussed.
okay. I'm probably missing it, I'm just looking for, the map refers to see detail on the fence, and I'm just not seeing it on the detail page. Am I missing it? Does somebody else see it? I see the silt fence, but not the split rail.
Yeah, it does not appear to be a detail.
Let's just make sure you add that in, and then the hand, if that was their condition, just make sure it says the hand dug posts.
A little, yeah, at the beginning.
I'm sure that'll be a condition of a permit anyway, I would expect, right? Okay. And again, the testing of any contaminants or anything, that is completely the purview of the health department, so that there would be requirement to test the well and ensure that it's providing potable water, and that's not the purview of this board, but we do condition our approval and the ability to file the map on the health department providing back their acceptance of your plan and your test results.
Well, and I think I mentioned this to the board before, we're at a point now where technically the plan is complete, but the next step is they told us we have to drill the well, do a quantity and quality test
Right.
prior to getting the approval.
Right.
So that would all be part of the record.
What would happen is our approval would be conditional upon you completing those steps with the health department, that's correct? Okay. All right, so do we have anyone else who wanted to speak for the Fakori application? Do we have any other names on the list? Oh, okay, all right. Then I think, Ernie, really the last thing is just to make sure you get the calculations updated, and depending on the results of those, if it, I don't want to close you out in the public hearing because it may kick the lot line or something.
Okay.
Okay? So we need to adjourn you. How long do you need to redo the calculations?
When is your next,
August 16th or September 6th?
September 6th?
September 6th? Okay, so do I have a motion to, excuse me, I'm sorry, adjourn the Fakori public hearing to September 6th?
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is an adjourned public hearing for Stuart Scott, 6 lots on Warren Farm Road.
Okay,
And do we have this to go up on the board since we're in public hearing? And do I have a motion to reopen the Stuart Scott public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
okay, as the result, the last meeting, we did make a submission, but it was submitted after the 18th, so I don't think the professionals have had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah, unfortunately, and the board, I think, only received them just a few days ago as well. So if you want to step us through that, it's fine, but we haven't had the opportunity yet to really dig in.
Well, essentially, in your submittal package, we took a look at the disturbance area, and we were actually able to reduce it slightly.
Okay?
And I think the plan is quite clear on that. Not much, but a little bit. Also, we put a sample of we talked to our wetland consultant, Mike Nowicki. He gave a proposal to do the
That was the 5-year monitoring.
monitoring. And then also, the board had said we had never seen this before in the town, and I had mentioned 1 or 2 projects. I was able to get a copy of a previous monitoring report, which I included.
Right. And that was for the Four Corners, and I believe it was my memory serves, there was an issue where they needed to do some things with the bank of the creek, and so they replaced some wetland area
Right.
in a different location on the property.
But there was a 5-year monitoring, just similar to what you would have here, and he went out and made his inspections, filed his reports, and I think it's done over a period of 5 years, and on conclusion, you send it in and you ask for a closeout,
Lease or a close.
you know, if you'd like something like an NOT, so to speak.
That assumes that the developer's around for 5 years?
Pardon me?
That assumes the developer is still active at the location for 5 years?
That I don't know. I don't know too much about the project. Alls I know is the work was done, the monitoring was done, it was closed out with the Army Corps.
So, I'm sorry, the assumption is that that bond will move with the property? Okay.
Yes.
And I apologize because I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but was the mitigation done on an individual home lot?
Yes.
On this, on what you provided to us? I don't believe so. I thought that was done in the common area. From what the approval said, and I didn't
Oh,
get a
wait a minute, you're
chance.
speaking of our project, or?
No, I'm speaking of the
Oh,
Mike Nowicki's.
again, I'm not the,
This was it was in the public space, the public area. This particular subdivision was 400 and some acres, and over 300 of them were left as conservation area.
I mean, I know where the project is, but I'm not familiar with the particulars. The point being is that this is not uncommon, and it was part of the permit that they got with Army Corps. The permit was honored, and they followed through with it, and they closed it out.
Yeah, I think what we were specifically saying was that, and what we felt was uncommon was that you would have an individual, single-family residence that would be responsible for this, where the examples that you have provided to us, at least so far, and within the town and with what our professionals were able to identify in areas around this town and other outside the town, were all large developers. They were either homeowners associations that were surviving in perpetuity to manage that 5-year plan, or the construction of a very large subdivision, and Four Corners is a good example of that, was going to take well more than that duration, that 5-year duration of the
And
wetland
These
project.
developers had millions of dollars in bonds posted at the time as well, so they weren't going anywhere.
Point. So this is a different animal to us, because if this lot is sold prior to the end of that 5-year period and the developer is no longer the owner of that parcel, then there's a residential homeowner that becomes responsible for that plan and the potential having to invest in replacing plants if they die and that sort of thing. So that's what
As
for
we
us is different. We were hoping that there were other examples that we would be able to look at for where a single-family residence actually did own and manage a plan like this, but we haven't been able to locate any, and I don't know if
Well,
Mike was able to find any other ones for you.
There's someplace
but-
in New York State and probably the nation where there are individual owners that do this. You know, the question came up is that the board said, we've never heard of this in the town of East Fishkill. The point being, I spoke with Nowicki. I said, you know, do you represent any clients? Yes, I do. And he sent me the information. I mean, if you're looking for individual.
We're still not clear that we're even the client in that particular case.
I was gonna say-
Or that happened after the fact as part of a permit with the DEC.
It looked like it was conditioned in the resolution, because the reparation of
Not
the
in the-
banks and the debris in the stream, which was what was disturbing those wetlands, was part of our resolution.
For the stream restoration.
Right, right. I think what happened was they were disturbing areas along the bank of the stream, so they created a new wetland to offset
Right,
the
but it didn't
disturbance.
speak specifically to any mitigation.
The resolution did not,
Right.
but it was likely a condition of the permitting they were issuing. We didn't
The
pull
permit
all the
issued by the
paperwork, Scott.
DEC. Right, we
Right,
still have to dig a little
right.
deeper, but I've never seen that report,
And so ballpark, like,
before today anyway.
how large a bond are we talking about here?
We haven't gone there yet.
I mean,
For a property
50,000.
like Four Corners was in the tens of millions.
I get that, but I mean, for this one wetland, what are we talking here? I mean,
I think just Nowicki's estimate to do the inspections were around 13.5.
That was just for the monitoring. It wouldn't
Just
have
for the
included
monitoring.
replacing the plants
Plus you gotta have all the
right.
plantings. yeah.
so I'm sorry, so Nowicki would be the one who.
Or whomever they chose, but he gave an estimate. That's what he
But
submitted.
the question was, who gets to say the wetland has now failed and it needs to be remediated?
Well, in the report that was given as an example, it was Mike Nowicki's assessment that I guess gets submitted to the DEC for final approval.
Theoretically, the issuing agency for the permit, though, might come out and inspect it and have a have the ability to disagree or have a,
Yeah,
a
well,
concern.
okay, because that's my concern is, you know, the consultant to the developer is not somebody, I mean, again, you know, our concern here is that this leaves the town with something to fix.
well, specifically a homeowner with something to fix, which might ultimately then become something
The
of the town.
town's problem.
Well, I think we represented to you that the owner, developer of the property is willing to put up a bond for that improvement. Now, we're getting estimates now to actually do the work. I mean, I don't know what the final number is. I could speculate, but I'd just be guessing, but we'll give you a firm number.
All right.
If we could just go back to the disturbance.
Yes.
Ernie, I just had a question. I know you said you reduced the number slightly. I'm reading a note that says temporary road mats shall be placed along well corridors and soil transportation paths to eliminate soil disturbance beyond the limits of the trench. So I take that to mean that you reduced your disturbance area by use of the mats. I thought we had a pretty specific conversation about that last time.
Yeah, what we did is we talked to the Army Corps, and that's an acceptable method, that you can put down mats for the truck tires. We increased the corridor, but the actual disturbance is actually the actual excavation.
So you're going to dig a trench, if I'm reading this correctly, you've included a 2-foot wide path to the well?
There'd be a 2-foot wide trench, where that would be for the line from the well to the house.
All right, so let me ask this question, not to be too picky, but when you dig, where do you put the dirt?
You put it right on, I mean, you put it on top
Got a
of,
2-foot bucket, and you
Yeah.
dig a trench.
Right.
Where do you put the dirt?
you can put it right on the mat for one, or you can put it on another mat. You could even put the soil on top of the ground that's there. The idea is that you're not excavating that soil.
So in your opinion, you can place spoils on the ground, and that does not count as disturbance?
That's correct. That's directly from the Army Corps.
Can you verify that?
Well,
Was there anything else that you did to reduce that disturbance area, other than recommending the mats as opposed to corridors dug in for the access?
That was primarily it. And then we tried to fine tune every area. We tried to, wherever we could duplicate and not do additional pathways or disturbance, if we could use one lane for two, we did that.
Okay. And again, we haven't been able to look at this fully. Do we have your, do we have this electronically, these plans electronically? Because some of the smaller drawings, it's hard to see actually how much distance you have between the limit of disturbance and actual, like, edge of a building or edge of a septic or something like that. I just want to be able to see that a little more clearly. Do we have it electronically from you?
Part of the submission is a disc. I believe you have it.
Okay.
The disc, yes, but not electronically where I can.
Okay. Joe, have you been able to take a look at you haven't been able to take a look at this?
No, I just got them today, but Scott and
is
I
there
were
anything
discussing the disturbance. Some of the locations look fairly tight, like near the house on Lot 12A. It's very close to the back of the house, the side of the house. So we're just seeing if that's maybe a little too unreasonable of a tight area of disturbance around the structures and the driveways.
And the other thing, in talking with Nowicki, and I didn't realize this myself, you probably know, but under the wetland law, you can ask for a variance over the 5 acres without putting controls in.
Okay.
So,
Are you proposing to do that?
well, that's something we can do if we're going to go back and forth over, we're talking about inches back and forth, we'll do that. But that's something that's totally acceptable under the law.
And that's because part of your disturbance is you're creating wetland. Is that why you're able to do that, or what's?
No, it's anything. In other words, we work, as you probably know, we work with a lot of wetland consultants, and this was from somebody else. And matter of fact, he recommends if you're in a situation where it could be tight, or rather than try to do battle on that, ask for the variance up front. You can do that. That's totally acceptable within the law, which I wasn't even aware of. And yet you don't have to put your permanent controls in.
Okay.
So that's possibly an option.
So are you proposing to amend your application to request that variance?
We could do that, sure.
Laura, do we have a new number? I mean, we've said slightly reduced, but
4.8.
I think it's 4.8 something.
4.84.
Yeah.
84.
I think before we were 495,
it was
494.
93 or 95 before, so now it's 84. Okay.
Michelle, is that something you're familiar with, that you can get a?
I'm not, and you're talking about getting a variance from DEC for allowing the,
Just in other words, I don't know how it works. I've never done it. But my understanding is you ask for that up front. The idea is, if, Scott, you come out to the site and you look at the plan, and all of a sudden you say, geez, you're supposed to have your orange fence up and your silt fence, and all of a sudden you see a pile of dirt over there, all of a sudden something went in there that shouldn't have. Right away, you could shut the project down because you're in violation. The point is, ask for it ahead of time so you don't get into that situation.
Well, you have to ask for it to be granted, I imagine.
How it works, I have to find that out, but
Okay.
but I'm told and that's a very acceptable way to do it. Matter of fact, it was Walter Artis that I talked to on that matter. And I think he knows that pretty well.
And that's just during the construction phase, it would allow you to go over the 5 acres without putting additional,
Yeah, the idea,
Controls
you
in
still try to
place.
follow the plan, you try to stick with the plan, but in case something happens beyond control, the last thing anyone wants to do, you're building a house and you get shut down because maybe, who knows, someone went outside the fence by 2 feet or 10 feet or something.
Because the
like that.
limits weren't drawn realistically. Like that?
Well, and maybe, or maybe some being careless. Scott, you've been around construction enough to know.
I've been around long enough to know that I don't believe you can build this according to these disturbance limits.
No, I kind of
I
disagree
don't think
with
you can dig a foundation and go down X amount of feet and backfill and grade and not disturb more than 4 foot outside
the concrete.
Realize if you
I've
look
never
at,
seen that done.
Scott, if you
so,
look at the plans, we're not going down deep on these foundations, we're raising them.
Regardless.
Well, I disagree with you.
But if you're proposing to amend your application to include that variance, there will be a process to that. You're investigating how you would go about doing
I have,
that?
Lori, I
It's not
don't,
something I'm honestly familiar with either, so.
I just found out about it, so I have to
Okay.
find out myself.
All right. But if that's what you're proposing, then that's, we can
Well, I
factor
throw
that
it
in
out for
as we're looking.
discussion, because obviously, we're still at the same discussion that we had 4 or 5 months ago. All right,
You
so I'm
understand the
saying,
board's
this is something I
concern.
just found out, so I think this is possibly a way we can get over that hump, where we can all kind of work and get through this, and all have a comfort level.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
We're struggling that we're getting stuff that does, because this is a little more complex, and the review that we need to do, we need enough time to be able to do that. I want to make sure that if we adjourn you again, I know we haven't opened for comment yet, but if we adjourn you again, we need to make sure that anything additional that you're going to do, or any amendment to your application, if you're going to apply for something like that, we need to make sure that you have enough time to get us that information and really be prepared, because I don't like to keep adjourning these things. I'd like to be able to bring this to a close, hopefully, in the near future. So just as we open for public comment now, I want to just make sure, if you're thinking about how much time you think you would need to investigate it, to figure out what changes to your application might be needed, we'll do that. Any final questions or comments from board members before we open for public comment?
My last question is the 3 and 4 lot option still off the table? Because I think we could close this a lot faster if we went to one of those other alternatives.
The owners is sticking with the 6 lots.
Okay.
I think we were, in one of the prior meetings, we said all or none, and I don't mean none as in 0 lots. You have existing 2 lots, and so it's all
Now,
or
our
2.
position is, and I'm beating a dead horse here. We have
Understood.
a permit. We have a permit. Now, if you can tell me, just because you don't like it, I don't think there's a reason for a board to turn something down. We have a permit. If you said to me, you can't get Board of Health
You
approval.
would certainly
if
agree
you
that the
can't-
permit
you-
is not the only thing that's required to be able to do a subdivision like this. Just having the permit doesn't mean that you have the right to do
Yeah,
the
but what I'm
subdivision. We
saying
have a
is
process
we've-
we are
we've-
following
Right,
for
but
seeker to make sure this works.
I get a strong sense here is that, like, Ms. Golden just said, well, do a 3-lot subdivision, we'll probably approve it tomorrow. And
All I
that's-
asked is whether it was still off the table.
It's off the
Because
table.
we had asked for the options. It was one of the options presented.
I didn't want to, and I told you also, I didn't want to give you those options because,
It was unfortunate because we didn't understand that you were willing to be an all or none consideration. So
okay.
the board understands that now,
Yep.
and if that changes, you will let us know. Otherwise, we understand it's an all or none.
And the board, as lead agency, has the right to ask for alternative layouts to mitigate impacts. And in this particular case, there's impacts related to wetlands and other things, and so they ask for alternative layouts.
And I think the wetland biologist said, you have high-quality wetlands and you've got wetlands. This is by no means a high-quality wetlands. This was an active farm through the 20s and the 30s, right up into the 60s. These are not pristine. This is not like the Great Swamp on Route 9, just
They're
north
not,
of Fishkill.
but I think there's other impacts related to stormwater and other things that they're looking at that occur when you disturb wetlands, other than just the habitat value of a wetland.
Any other comments from our professionals before we open for public comment?
I think also for the limits of disturbance, just to verify what they are, we would like to have either some more details on how you got the individual areas or some kind of a CAD drawing to allow us to check or spot check several locations that look a little under whatever's represented here. So.
I'm sorry, Joe, I'm not following.
Well, given all the different line types and the shading and the different way that the areas have been called out, it's not all that clear at this scale what's counted and what's not counted, so we were asking for the CAD file to be more able to look at the map in detail.
Any other comments or questions from our professionals before we open for public comment? Okay, is there anyone who would like to offer public comment for Stuart Scott? Going once? Twice? Okay. All right. Ernie, you can come back up. We need to adjourn you if you're going to modify your application to include that permit. How much time do you need to do that? And be able to provide to the planning board and its professionals at least 2 weeks ahead of whatever we adjourn to, for us to be able to review your information.
I'll make it the 6th if you have an opening.
September 6th? So within a week, you should have a new submission in, including any changes or amendments to
Yeah,
your
I mean,
application?
we just made a submission which you haven't taken a look at. I think the only issue now, I mean, I don't know whether I got to submit a whole entire new packet if we're just talking about that. I have to find out more about that variance. That's the only thing I see.
Okay. Can we make it the
wait a minute.
20th, just to give you time? Because if you do decide that it's something you need to apply for and you need to advertise, I just want to make sure there's
Okay.
time for you to be able to do that before we have you back again and then have to adjourn it again. Does that make sense?
It's fine.
So I'm sorry, so the Four Corners example is the only thing we're going to see relative to that type of case study?
Yeah.
I can do some more checking. I mean, I just, I didn't spend hours and hours doing this, Mike. I mean, I'm
think that was
sure there are
something
private
Michelle also had an
individuals.
example she was able to share with us.
I'm sure there's
with-
private individuals in Dutchess County who have gotten a permit like this and had to have it monitored, I'm sure. I mean, if I have to do some checking, I will. I'll call my contact at Army Corps.
Okay, and again, Ernie, I don't mean to be difficult here, but I'm really curious to see how this gets passed on. And that, somehow this is not made onerous to the homeowner who buys this and says, well, wait a minute, I'm not doing this. That somehow it's all upfront and
It's on the plan, it's in the deed, it's probably in the contract of sale. I don't know what else you could say and do.
well, I know, and that's where I'd
But
really
what-
kind of like
but
to
what
see
we're not
what's in
hearing-
the con and what's in the deed, excuse me.
What we're not hearing, though, is that the developer will remain engaged for the full 5 years. It sounds like you are intending to pass off this responsibility to a residential homeowner.
So, as
Mr.
I
Gold,
started to
listen, let me
say,
say
I'd
this.
like to see what's in the deed.
Mr. Gold is 90 years old. He's in failing health, all right? I'm not sure he's going to be around for 5 years. I hope he is, because he's a heck of a guy. But I can't speak to that. I think what he wants to do, he's trying to get rid of some things in his life, and this is one of them.
But it was suggested that would be potentially a bond to help cover that. Whoever it gets passed on to, as long as the bond was
Right,
in existence.
right, like to see all that. All I'm asking is
But
show me.
we would need that to be either assignable to the homeowner or whatever. I don't know what the mechanics of that are, but we
Right,
just
no, I
need
don't
to
either, but I
understand that there's a
think-
way for the town to be assured that this won't
But I
become
think
a
we're
burden to the
suggesting that as an alternative approach to address the concerns I'm hearing.
Okay. So if we adjourn you to the 20th and you need to re-advertise, that means you would have to have the advertisement go out by August, is it the 25th, Pam? For the right number of days, if there's an amendment to the application to include an additional permit?
Wait, you said it would have to be a revised, you'd have to advertise in the paper again? I think I always thought if you went month to month, you didn't have to do that.
But you're changing your application and potentially to include additional permitting. I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm looking at you because I'm just not familiar with this.
I don't
so-
know if this is a permit or if this
It's
is
not-
just
it's-
a
this-
waiver or if
It's not I have to find out how it works. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think it's an additional permit. The way Walter described it, he says you just declare it up front. But I have to find out. But it's not, you don't get another permit.
Okay. Is it something you're familiar with,
Well,
Michelle?
the only
just
thing I
don't-
can think of, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that you could ask to waive something ahead of time. So like, in other words, if you already had approvals and you knew you were gonna go over at some point because of some field change that happened when you were in construction, they would waive of the 5-acre limit, but I feel like if you go to them, when you're preparing a plan and you're saying, we think we're gonna go over and we want a waiver to go over, they would just tell you to do a SWIP. I mean, that seems like how it worked to me, but I don't know for certain, so I will call and find out. I mean, I think it feels like something that would happen after the fact, after there's been an approval made and you realize at that point in time between when your approval's been granted and you started construction that you might have an area that goes over because there's been a field change or some other circumstances. But I don't know for certain, so I will certainly ask.
Agree to disagree.
If you are fairly certain it would not require re-advertising, we can put you on for the 6th of September, but we still would need to have whatever additional information you're going to provide to us
Let me
within that 2
find out how
weeks.
that works, and I'll find out how it works. You know, I don't think, the way it was described to me, it's not an additional permit, so, but I'll have to find out. It's new to me, too. I'd never heard of that before.
Okay.
I mean,
If-
Joe, you do this like we do. I mean,
Yeah, I just don't know if
there's
it's,
always that 5-acre, try to
yeah,
keep it
there's,
under
I
5
mean, there's,
acres.
right, there's the 5 acres at any one time waiver for bigger projects, but this would be more 5 acres in total. So I don't know if those are the same kind of waivers or.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. But,
You're right, typically on a subdivision, you always try to keep it in 5-acre increments, as I recall.
right. The way you first talked about it, I thought it had something to do with the wetlands law as well as the stormwater law. But, yeah, if you can find out more about that, I think it would help.
We'll research it, too.
So if it doesn't sound like an additional permit and you wouldn't have to re-advertise, if you think you can find out about it and still get us information at least 2 weeks prior to the 15 days prior to September 6th, that's fine, but then you're in the situation that if you do end up having to re-advertise, we're going to have to adjourn you again. And I'm just trying to avoid that. So
Well, to be safe, does it make sense to go to the 20th?
I think it gives you all the options and gives you a little bit more time if there's when you do the research, if there's something else that needs to be done, it gives you the time to still get us everything, by the 5th of September, and we can put you on for the 20th.
I mean, if I can get the information by the end of the week, would you put us back on the 6th? Or do you need to make that decision
Once we
tonight?
adjourn, once we adjourn your public hearing, you're adjourned to a date certain. I don't want to adjourn you to a date uncertain unless we really have to.
When would that information have to be to you by?
15 days before.
Which would be around the 18th, 19th?
Of the 20th, it would be the 5th, which is Labor Day.
Or August
No, I mean
21st.
Of the
For the
6th,
6th.
for September 6th, it would
September
be,
Be the 22nd.
All right, we can get it there by then. The 6th.
okay. Right. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Stuart Scott subdivision to September 6th?
So moved?
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And please stay in touch with us if there's something else or anything, please work with our professionals and let's try to make sure we can wrap this up, hopefully with the next one. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Global Foundries, and I know we have several board members who need to recuse themselves for the last 2 items on the agenda, so
I do.
thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and have Global Foundries come on up. Teresa, if you want to, yeah. Don't be a stranger, come on over. So while we're getting squared away here, do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing for Global Foundries?
So moved. Second.
And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we'll be ready to go in just a moment.
Good evening.
Hello. You're on, you're all set.
Okay. I just want to fill you in on some changes that have occurred since the last time we were here
Okay.
for this 8-lot subdivision. As a result of conversations with the town attorney, Tom Wood, he had asked us to make an alteration or revise Lot 5, I'm pointing to that in the middle here, so that we created another fee right-of-way in front of that piece, Lot 5, so that it would facilitate the conveyance of the roadway to, the powers that be, whether that be the town at some point in the future. So that was Mr. Wood's suggestion, and so that's why we changed Lot 5 to essentially take out the road piece, okay? Other things, just minor things, I think Joe had asked that we labeled the water towers properly after a couple of times. I think we've got it right now. And additionally, what has also transpired and what is in your packets is that there's a letter of intent between IBM and Global Foundries regarding an issue that came up the last meeting about the discharge of water and related to water plants. And essentially, if you have not had a chance to look at the letter of intent, it's the preliminary of an agreement between Global and IBM that IBM will allow Global to reuse water such that it wouldn't increase discharge. So those are the primary changes since we were last here.
Okay. For the subdivision, one of the other things I think we had spoken about was there would be kind of I'm going to call it a laundry list, not to minimize it, but a laundry list of potential cross-access easements, cross-parking easements, utility easements, and agreements between the lots of your subdivision to ensure that utilities will be provided to all. Is that something that you're working on with the town attorney? I know the town attorney wasn't here tonight, but is that something you're working on with the town attorney that's well in hand, or do you have any questions?
No, we are working with Tom Wood on that. And actually, we kind of outlined that in our letter to the board of, how that would work. But as far as the legal, if you're speaking in terms of a more refined legal document, yes, Global will have to work with Tom on the nitty-gritty specifics of that.
No questions or no significant changes to what we've already discussed in the prior sessions?
No.
With regard, okay.
No.
All right. And I think, just with part of that, Michelle, I know, I think you were taking a look at the parking requirements for each existing building as they stand today.
Correct.
And how did we make out with that? And I believe, I don't know, are you going to have a cross-parking agreement for all lots or just particular lots?
For
apologize if that's in your letter.
all with the exception, it's in the comments, with the exception of Lot 5, of which, again, since it's the core manufacturing, Global would like to restrict other lots from using their parking.
Will Lot 5 be able to use other lots and just nobody uses their lot, or?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not fully encapsulated, it's just only kind of the outward bound?
That's correct.
Okay.
yeah.
So Michelle, I'll go ahead, and if you want to just kind of walk us
So
through the parking.
I went through the list that Global Foundries provided to me of the different buildings, the parcels that they'll be placed on, the building size and the use. And most of the buildings, there's some very large buildings out there, obviously, and a lot of the buildings are manufacturing buildings that have a tremendous amount of square footage, but are actually have very minor parking requirements because of the type of use that's happening. And there's also a lot of buildings like central utility plants and other types of buildings that really would never require anyone to park there. They're more for infrastructure and utilities. Even if they were to be reused, in some way, they wouldn't be reused as an office building.
Okay.
So
So they would be either minimally occupied or not occupied except when someone needs to do maintenance or something like that?
Correct. And there's just one question I actually have for Bob about, there's a number of buildings that are listed as end of life. And I just wanted to verify now, are those buildings are not necessarily definitely coming down. They're just sort of reached their end of their lifespan and will likely come down at some point?
We just want to have you come to the mic. I'm sorry, it's,
Michelle, the only ones that are planned to come down, as our plan exists right now today, would be 310, which would be, I would say, 85% of that structure. 50,000 square foot of that will be retained.
Okay.
And then 322 on lot number 5,
Okay.
that would also be taken down.
And those are the ones that you have listed demo proposals for? Okay. So there's a number of buildings right now that are currently not really being utilized, but, and are listed as end of life, but we, as a planning board,
there's no
cannot understand.
current
Exactly.
intent to take them, okay.
So we would have to sort of factor them in, and I've allotted parking for those particular buildings. And I'm still under the existing parking number.
So can you just give us a feel for the total required spaces versus
Sure.
total provided?
The existing,
Bulk, not for each lot.
the existing total parking is about 7,850 spaces, and my calculation of the required parking, and again, I was being pretty conservative here, is about 7,800 spaces. So there's at least 50 to work with, but I think even more than that, actually.
And that's if every building had its current ability to use fully maximized.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's giving the fab probably way more parking than they need.
Where's the end of use one?
Okay,
These are all end-of-life buildings.
okay.
But they have a parking.
Yeah.
You're still
So-
counting parking.
Just to give a reference to that, today, roughly 2,200 parking spots are being used, just in today's.
Understood, understood. Part of what this is we're, when you subdivide like this, we talked about the easements back and forth, we just want to make sure that if there's one lot in particular that maybe ends up with no parking or has, based on the building occupancy versus the available parking, if there's something specific we needed to call out, we just wanted to be able to kind of understand that. And I think, Michelle, other than what you've just stated with regard to Lot 5, I don't think was there any lot where we had a concern?
No, and there are a number of lots that have nothing on them. Currently, that's the other thing I wanted to just make sure everyone is clear on. The parcels that we're talking about are parcel 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7, and the rest of the parcels do not have any structures associated with them, so there is no parking requirement currently.
Okay. And no parking provided on those parcels? There's no development on those
Correct.
parcels? On the ones other than 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7? Okay. Which would make that 4, 6, and 8.
4, 6, and 8.
Sorry. Long night, sorry. Okay. So Michelle, is there anything you're recommending with regard to parking other than just the cross-access easements and the understanding that Lot 5 will not allow parking from other lots upon their site? I don't think
No,
that's
but
a concern.
I think we just need to make sure that in our, whatever documents we have, that we've, we color-coded or something, so it's very clear to us what's been allotted and where, and we can certainly do that and include that with the resolution when we do that.
Okay, and I think one of the other, anybody have any other questions on the parking? No. Okay, so one of the other things we had talked with you about, I think at the last meeting, was that you had moved the one of the pump stations,
Groundwater
Sorry.
remediation.
one of the remediation stations, so it wasn't crossing a building line, but you said you had one other building, I think that was still, had a lot line bisecting it. Is that still the case, or have you?
Oh, yes, there are still, I can point out to you, maybe it's easier for me.
That's fine.
There's still a lot line going through and between the 320A and 320B and 310 and also the 309. So because it's impossible for them not to go through, there's corridors, the buildings are attached. So those lot lines are still
So
going
the-
through.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
cut you off.
those lot lines are still positioned such that they're going through those buildings.
So I think, and Joe, was it your letter that just said there would be certain like fire codes and things like that that would have to probably be
Yeah.
reviewed? You may have to install firewalls and
firewall,
things like that to ensure that you have the correct kind of protection between the lots.
That's right. And,
Okay.
yeah, we restated that in our response to those comments, that,
Okay.
yes, that would be, whatever was appropriate to fire code, to the code, it would be, firewalls would be put in that case.
So
Okay.
internally to the building, at the lot line that's crossing, is it closed off inside the building as well, or? Like between 320A and 320B, I mean, it cuts it right in half.
Mm-hmm.
Is it closed off inside as well, or is it? or is it
You're
open?
asking how will that be handled?
Yeah.
In theory, if they're gonna build a firewall, yeah,
So
sure.
it's, so there's no connection between the two then?
Right.
It's
when-
closed off?
Yes.
Or it would be through
Right.
fire doors or some sort of heavy-duty kind
All
of
right.
type
So-
of access.
Is there like some kind of easement or something for like utilities and stuff on that building? Because now the building's split in two and divided.
Well, that's kind of handled under this cross easement thing, that essentially with Global Foundries is going to own, operate, and maintain and provide service to the other lots. So that's not a real concern because of that cross-utility agreement, if you will, or provision that has been put in. that
So
we're
if something
talking.
happens in 320A on Lot 2, it's up to Global Foundries to take care of that?
Yes, that's very definitive here, that they will, and it's because of that it's a complex industrial site that was not really designed to be subdivided. So,
Right.
I mean, that's the reasoning, that's really the necessity. And it's been done in Dutchess County on other IBM properties, such as Boardman Road, even though that's a much smaller site.
smaller.
Similar things happen there,
Okay.
the commercial site.
The legal aspect of it would have to be worked through with Tom Wood. The more practical aspect, the physical
That's
aspect
the
of
problem I
it.
have.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Are most of these, I'll call it like power service or the effluent and things like that, are these all underground pipes or are they actually moving within the building and you're going to have to bury them when you put up firewalls and things? Like, is there a lot of electrical type work to be done and repiping?
Like, where are all the power panels for 320B and, you know?
What
You know what
you're
I'm
asking me,
saying?
I'm sorry?
Let me just take this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, all the utilities for the campus come out of one centralized utility plant, whether it be chilled water, the electric, the power distribution, or the wastewater treatment. So Global Foundries is going to retain responsibility, ownership, and maintenance, repair to all the utilities, regardless of which property that it's on. So there'll be this cross easement for each one of the parcels where Global Foundries can go on the other property, even though it's owned by somebody else.
What happens if Global Foundries goes out of business? What happens to all these other property owners then?
So there'll be a provision in the contract there that if the property is sold, that
I'm not saying sold, I'm saying goes out of business and you walk away.
then there's a provision for the town or the county to go pick up the wastewater treatment facilities. That's why a transportation corporation is being formed for the sanitary treatment plant.
For that, yeah.
And there'll be a provision for somebody else to pick up ownership and responsibility to maintain continuous facilities to the rest of the buildings.
Who?
Whoever's interested in it,
What happens if nobody's interested?
then the site does not operate.
That means anybody that bought these other properties don't operate either.
So if somebody was interested in the other properties, then they have the right to go pick up ownership of the Central Utility Plant and the rest of the treatment facilities.
All right.
So that's all been vetted with the engineer and the town attorney. And they seem satisfied with the provisions that we've made thus far.
Okay. Scott, is that something that has like an operating or a maintenance bond related to it, or is that not necessary? I'm just, we're just not familiar with the way.
Really, our only concern is the water and sewer.
Okay.
I think it's up to these buyers of these parcels to understand the agreement and what they're buying and
Okay.
what the end game is.
But do you get
should-
what I'm saying,
should
Scott?
global. What's that?
Do you get what I'm saying?
I get you 100%. I get you 100%. But whoever buys that building's gonna understand exactly, it's all disclosed. And
Are they? That's, I mean,
yeah, it's all
Yeah.
disclosed, and then, either they pick up the main utility plant, or they reroute and go out to 52 and bring new power in, and new heat in, whatever they have to do, but our only
But
purview is
theoretically,
really
you
the
wouldn't
water
have
and
to
sewer.
rewire an entire building to switch over power service from one
yeah.
power provider to another. You wouldn't have to do an entire rewiring or something. You just switch
No,
over a
at the
main power input,
Right,
right?
at the main,
Well, it ain't
right, at the
that
main.
easy.
right.
It's easy to say that.
Well, but it can be done
anything can be
without
done.
ripping
I
out
mean-
walls and stuff, right?
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. I have a problem with this.
For right now, there's no provisions being made to separate any of these facilities. It'll be that Global Foundries will continue to provide all of the utility services they are required to operate Global's buildings, as well as the other lots that will not be used by Global.
Does that include new construction from the other lots, or do you anticipate new construction from the other lots to use other services?
So on those vacant lots, if there is new construction, the only obligation that Global Foundries would have was to supply what Scott just talked about, would be
Water
the
and sewer.
water and the wastewater.
Okay.
But that would travel through any of the existing buildings. That would be all new infrastructure and a standalone line for both water and sewer.
And are we comfortable
They
those would
can't
just,
piggyback anything that exists with any of the new development.
why not?
You're going to keep anything that's new separate. We're not going to continue to go the route that's been going for 30 years of just piggybacking utilities. Anything that's new will have a direct line to the sewer plant or direct line to the water tank.
So do we have comfort that either in the road right-of-way or somewhere like that, we'd be able to
Yes,
put in
absolutely.
whatever lines we would need to?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. So we've looked at that, we've got the space, there's right-of-ways and all of that, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah, again, the right-of-ways are very wide that we've created for these fee roads. They're commonly 70 feet wide, some in places 80 feet wide.
Okay.
That's to allow for the, snow removal, even beyond the shoulders.
But also to be able to install additional piping as you have
Yeah,
potential
there would-
new construction at these sites?
Absolutely, there would
Okay.
be plenty of room in these right-of-ways. These are, very wide.
Okay.
Just real quick, I just want to make a comment. With the firewall, note that you also have to take a look at your egress, just in case a firewall cuts off egress, so that would be the other thing that had to be looked at as well.
Sure.
Whether or not you got to provide additional egress because now you have a new wall splitting a building.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott, other than what we had already talked about with Tom with regard to the technical or legal language for the easements, is there anything that we need to talk about or include with regard to the firewalls or any separation of these buildings across lot lines from a more, I'll call it more physical perspective versus the legal aspect?
In terms of, in the resolution, you mean?
Yeah, is there anything else we would need to?
We may
Talk
put some
through.
general notes as everything's going to abide by the state building code.
State building, okay.
Something to that effect.
Yeah, we, in our comment, we said,
Building and fire code.
wanted to call out that says wording at those locations where the property line goes through a building, to have a note saying the applicant will prepare a building permit application or alternately a demolition permit that goes to the town to demonstrate conformance with all applicable codes, including state building and fire code.
So that would be a condition of your subdivision? Mm-hmm. Okay,
Yeah, we can
Okay.
certainly get that note on the plan.
okay.
But as far as like the timing of when that gets submitted, that's something they probably would have to coordinate with the building department when the time came. I don't
Right,
know.
yes, because it's not clear precisely when this will occur, so yes, when that
We'll
does.
tie it somehow to an occupancy permit, whether it's a fit-out permit, occupancy permit, it'll be tied to that.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll have that worked out by the time resolution time rolls around.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members? Any other questions or comments from professionals before I open for public comment? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to offer public comment for the Global Foundries application for 8 lots at Route 52 and Lime Kiln Road? Okay, Sure, if you'd like to make comment, you can come on up. You can come on up. We'll just have you sign in. There's a clipboard here at the table so we can capture your name for our minutes, and you can come right to the podium, sir. Thank you.
Afternoon. Evening. I'm Larry McKinney. I live down behind what is now the new Shell station in that area.
Okay.
And my concern is, I don't know what they're doing with their water that they plan to pump, but I'd like to know where he plans to pump his water. If he plans to pump it from the IBM section across over on the side where the gas station is, in any part of that area. There's a small creek that runs through there and it runs down through my neighborhood and behind my house. Any and all excess water over like 5 inches floods us out, that entire neighborhood.
Okay.
And that's quite a bit of water that comes through there, just on its own already. And it's already coming from the IBM side, down where you can't see the railroad track anymore, but there was a railroad track there.
Right.
There's a creek right there that runs down close to Circle Drive and behind the whole neighborhood. So I'd like to know from him or somebody that's representing him where this water is going and what they plan to do about it. Okay?
Okay. Any other questions, or, okay? Hold on, we'll address each person's comments. If you want to sign up, you can sign up, we'll call you up. But if I could have the applicant return to the podium for just a minute? And if you don't mind just taking a moment, walk us through your current effluent and any changes. I think with the subdivision, there's no change, but just if you can walk us through what happens today.
So roughly today, we utilize 3 million gallons of water from various sources, some of it from the municipal water source that comes from the Hudson, some of it from the treated groundwater that's underneath the campus, the East Campus, and then about another 1 million gallons that comes from remote well fields that are down between 52 and 82.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
So there's roughly 3 million gallons of water that Global Foundries uses every day, which is consistent with the volumes that IBM used when it operated the site.
Okay.
That will continue to occur as it is today, and we've worked feverishly with IBM over the course of the last month to get the letter of intent that Martin described to you, so that there will be no additional discharge from the Global Foundries facility. So the net increase should be 0.
Okay.
So we've
So
got,
you have an existing permit.
and we've got an existing permit there with the NISDEC that allows us to discharge that treated water to the surface waters there for New York.
And with this application, you're not proposing any change to the uses you currently have? You're not stopping any uses you currently have, but you're not changing any of the uses you currently have, and you're not changing the volume of water that is currently being used?
That is correct.
Okay. Jason, you had a
But I
question?
think in the last meeting that with the current discharge that they have now, there's problems on that creek.
Right.
And one of the, I think, the lady in the background there.
what he's referring to. I don't know, is Joe in tonight or no? Joe Mean, is he here? Yeah, maybe Joe can speak to that. I know we looked into it a little bit.
Well, we haven't opened comment yet.
wait. 1 second.
But it was her that was,
Right.
Good evening, Board. My name's Joe Mima. I'm with Bernier and Larios, here to represent this IBM groundwater remediation.
I know we haven't opened your public hearing yet
Project.
again, or reopened your public hearing, but if you don't mind offering the comment during this one, we appreciate
That's
it.
fine. The homeowner on Locust Lane spoke last meeting about the creek that passed through her property and expressed concerns with the water coming through there. She mentioned that the creek overflows. She, at a 10-day cycle was mentioned. We looked at that situation, spoke with Global Foundries and IBM in terms of their groundwater pumping and their wastewater treatment plant operations, and there's no 10-day variance in cycles or discharge from the plant. It's pretty much discharging at a constant rate, right around an average of 3 million gallons per day. It may vary from 2.8 to 3.2, but it's basically right in that same range. So from a Global Foundries discharge of wastewater standpoint, there was nothing that they understood which would lead to 10-day cycling of that water level changing in any significant way.
So that would be water used at the site. Is it safe to assume that if there was, say, a rain event or something like that, there's certainly going to be an increase, not just from whatever would come from this property, but from all of the properties around the...
Correct.
Rain
There's-
events are going to affect, you'll still be Global Foundries would still be using 3 million gallons a day, but any rain event would be in addition to an additional discharge into the creek.
That's correct. There's a very large watershed that drains to the Gildersleeve Brook. It's part of the plant site, but then upstream of the plant, there's a fairly large area. I think the total watershed area is on the order of 1,400 or 1,500 acres of land. And that's what all comes down, eventually drains under Route 52, under Lake Drive, and then eventually to Wickapee Creek.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Joe,
Excuse me?
well, I know
Yeah,
Joe,
we were
Joe
just-
looked at,
The amount of buildings and impervious in the IBM and Global Foundries site is listed as 214 acres of building and pavement, hard impervious surface. And just out of curiosity, I wanted to see what an inch of rain would make over 214 acres, and it worked out to be something between 5 and 6 million gallons of water just from 1 inch of runoff. So although you're talking about the 1,500 acre watershed, because this much of it is paved on the lower end or the side that then crosses 52, it seems like it has a larger impact, but I know you're not actually looking to change any of that at this point.
That's correct.
just trying to explain where
So
these
Joe's-
variations may come from.
So Joe, when, say there's a 1-inch rain event, you'd have potentially up to, you said, 5 million gallons per day from the stormwater runoff
Right.
from the site, plus the 3 million gallons already being used. So that is a pretty big swing.
Right.
But that's existing,
That's existing.
you're not changing any of the stormwater drainage or anything, that's an existing permitted
Yeah,
use?
correct, we're not changing anything. We are not planning on doing any infrastructure changes here in our 8-lot subdivision application.
Okay. And if you were to propose that in the future, that all comes back through a site plan and would have to be reviewed at the time with whatever changes would be proposed?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, did that answer your question, or do you still have a question?
Can I just want to answer some questions? Would you like me to come back up?
Sure, sure.
It's going to continue.
It all sounds good and smooth, but I don't really buy it because I live there. I can show you a picture where my house is like, it's like it's sitting in a lake, just some ordinary rainwater where it rains for like 5 days straight. And the water that's coming into the neighborhood adds to that water, as the gentleman Joe was saying, and it just makes it worse. It goes from a lake around the house across the street. I have a photograph on my phone if you'd like to take a look at just that ugly picture of my house sitting in a lake. Would you like to see it?
If you have it, that would be
I
great.
have it on
And
my
what we
phone.
could do is also ask you, maybe you could email it to our planning
I'll try
department. We
doing
can
that. I'm
put it
not
in.
good at this. All right, so let's pull up this
And this
picture.
is, just give us a feel for, this is,
I'm on 55 McKeon Terrace.
and it's a heavy rainfall, or it's rain over a day?
If it, just like it
hour
rained recently, if it just rains constantly, the water coming in is gushing in. It's not just easing in.
Okay,
And it really ends behind my house.
okay.
And that probably, because it comes in, it goes around, just like this, and it stops. And then it comes forward, and it floods that whole area out.
How long does it stay like that? Does it take it a day to drain out, 2 days to drain out?
Comes forward, it takes 3 days.
3 days.
All right, come on, picture. I know you're in here, I just saw you. There it is. Would you like me to approach you?
Sure, that would be fine.
And you'll see the driveway. So if you could stop this from coming in, we would really appreciate it. We can't even put furniture downstairs.
Yeah.
And one year, we got 3 floods like that.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Thank you.
And that happens like 3 or 4 times a year, 3 or 4 times a
It comes
season?
close every year.
Okay,
Last year it came close, but it didn't come in.
okay.
The year before it came close, but it didn't come in. The year before,
What's your address?
you
Is
got
it
1 or 2
55
times a
McKeon Terrace.
year? How many times a year, you think?
I say, basically after the spring, it comes in close,
Yeah.
but basically during the winter,
Yeah, okay.
it comes in a
With all
lot
this-
closer.
A lot closer with the snow.
What about
It
this
does,
last rain
particularly with the
event?
snow. I'm
What
sorry.
about this last weekend?
Yeah.
This last weekend, it didn't affect it.
Okay, because everything was so dry, it
Yeah,
just got
it
absorbed.
didn't affect it.
Yeah, because it was very dry.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, did somebody else ask me a question?
No, I just asked for your address, thank you.
Oh, Mike, do you have it?
Yep, you gave it to me.
55 McKeon
Yep,
Terrace?
yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's helpful. Okay.
So if we could reduce.
So with regard to to this application for the subdivision itself, there's not anticipated to be any change to the water that currently happens. So it sounds like if you're getting that sort of water right now and the flooding across the street right now, it's not going to be improved with this, but it also shouldn't be worsened by it. I think, Scott, I don't know if we've seen that, or if we the flooding that the gentleman just shared with us, if we're,
Well, we notice obviously flooding in that area. We know a lot of it's in the floodplain.
okay,
And there's a lot of contributing factors to that.
right.
As far as this application, not going to increase the discharge.
I understand, I'm just saying, I didn't know if there was
Our
any.
problems at Lake City, this isn't going to increase that.
It's not like there's any drainage system or anything that needs to be cleaned out, or there's no like
Floodplain
thing
is
that would.
floodplain.
Floodplain's a floodplain, okay.
But as part of this subdivision, is there anything we should be doing to minimize the impact? You
Well,
know,
that's what we've
reduce the
done
amount
by
of-
getting them to agree to continue to use the water in manufacturing as opposed to just directly discharging it to
Yeah,
the
I think the
Gilder.
big thing is
What
that,
about reducing impervious surface? Because especially if they're only using 2,200 spaces and we've got 7,000.
I think the next thing you got to consider, if there is contaminants on the site and you open it up to more rainfall, I don't even know what that begins to do. So I don't know that even if we could, we'd want to. I don't know.
but I think, just to be, and Teresa, I take your point, but I think for a subdivision like this, where they're not changing any of the uses, there's no site plan involved with it, it's probably
It's not the right
not the
time.
moment, but there may be other mitigations that could be put in place if there's site plan changes that
Individual
come in the
site plans,
future.
potentially.
With the development, further development of the 8 lots.
Got it.
And this is really helpful to us, that you share that with us, so we appreciate that. Okay, of course, come on up.
Two things that I can think of while I'm listening to the conversation. One is that the discharge from the facility, the 3 million gallons a day, that's consistent, around the clock. So it's not a deluge system. So it's a
Right.
constant discharge. And the other thing is we may be able to improve the runoff from the site because we're going to be ripping down, I mentioned 2 buildings. So, that's going to be a significant area that, if we do go forward with the plans there, those demoed buildings would be reduced area for runoff.
I thought you were leaving the slabs, though.
Well, that may be the case there.
So if you leave the slabs, you don't gain anything.
But I think what you're hearing is that, you know, as we move forward, if there's ways that we can help sort of mitigate some of that point flow from storms. And again, you're not proposing any site plan changes right now, and we understand this is just the subdivision, but, you know, as we move forward.
So my comment to that, Scott, is that even though the slab would remain, we, in a couple of cases there, may backfill the slab with maybe 2 foot of topsoil and then put lawn on it.
Oh, okay.
For a period of,
Sure.
for a period of time. I mean, it's not a firm commitment.
Right, but that would
that's a-
help. Sure, if you could do that.
That's a plan, and that would help with the retention,
Yes.
The purpose of leaving the slab is?
just to save costs. It's to get rid of an obsolete building that's non-functional and take it down to the concrete slab and leave the slab in place and may put topsoil on it and then seed it over.
There's nothing says that he has to remove the slab, you know.
No, I get it, just,
Okay.
is there gonna be enough topsoil there to?
Did you sign it? Yeah, please do.
I don't think there's anything that obliges him to do that at this point, so
We can ask them.
you can certainly ask him. Dome's got a pile of dirt.
We covered that just
All
fine.
right. Were you our next person? Absolutely, come on up.
Margaret Conklin, 19 Locust Lane, and I'm the abutting property owner once the water leaves the site. And last week time, you asked me if I had any photos, and I do have lots of photos for you. First of all, I am very much in favor of the subdivision. I don't want to see it sitting there, as I mentioned last time, at the 650. And if Global's going to do something to bring jobs and better industries to our community, I'm all for it. I do have concerns about the water treatment plants, because at last hearing, that was going to be discharging into the brook, which is now a really bad problem. The gentleman in Lake City there, those people, they have got the Corps of Engineers. One of the houses is even getting raised off the foundation right now. My property is sometimes underwater. Now, I understand the gentleman said there's not a cycle. They let the water out. I beg to differ with that. I don't sit there with a clock, but I can tell you, it doesn't have to rain, and that water table changes. The water never freezes. There's steam coming out of it constantly when it's cold weather. There's a tremendous amount of discharge coming out of the plant area, and all the drainage does go into that brook also. I do have the pictures, but another couple of things I want to mention is the number of the times Route 52 has been closed by the DOT because the little section there between the plant on 52 coming across has been closed because of flooding. And I think you really have to look into what's happening to my neighbors downstream, because the creek is not adequate to take the runoff that's existing on a daily basis right now. And they do change. You can tell when the water is let out. It's hot. That's not natural rainwater. It doesn't come out warm. The other thing is, I've sat here and listened to you talk about other things with subdivisions about wetlands. This brook leads into designated wetlands. And if the plant, this gentleman did concerns about if Global Foundries doesn't continue its fab operation there, which we pray it does, but that way, who is going to be maintaining it? And that way, they're not going to be utilizing the water that's going to be coming out of the groundwater retaining, the cleaning system that's they're going to put in. Who is going to be using that water? And is it going to end up going down this brook again? And that's going to destroy the wetlands, because it's going to be hot water coming out of the treatment centers. And I'm all for the treatment centers. As some of you know, I don't drink my water in my home because it's polluted, and nobody gives one darn about it, because I had gasoline in it from the existing gas station that everybody approved and is so happy to have. But I still have no water. So am I happy that they're going to be doing groundwater usage and cleaning it? Yes, I am. I'm happy about the subdivision. But please look at us as neighbors of the property, and where's all this water going? And they're going to rip the buildings down. So that means there's going to be even more runoff coming into the stream. The stream was not designed to take this industry coming out of it, and that's what, just please be considerate of that fact, and us, and the homeowners in Lake City that are underwater. And it doesn't seem like anybody is helping us. And that's my point of why I'm here to talk to you tonight. And you can see the pictures.
Great, yes, you can you leave these with us, or do you?
Here's my field. This was taken on February 19th. This was taken on February 23rd. You can see the brook never freezes, never freezes. There's steam coming out of it all the time. This picture here, this was taken yesterday. This is from my little bridge going across my field. This is my bridge today because it rained, and that's the same water. You can see how much larger the flow is. This is looking from my property towards the power lines. This is the water coming in. This was yesterday.
Okay.
The little stream here. This is the water also yesterday. This is the bridge by 52. This was me looking at the highway, looking down towards the street. And you can see how here the water level was up higher than you see by the time I took the picture. This is the same location, except a little bit higher, the water. There's another picture of it also. This is a little brook that's taken, I don't know how many gallons of water you're telling me it's coming in, but that's the little brook that's doing it. This is looking from 52 towards the power lines, away towards my property, not the IBM property. This is the brook yesterday. And this is the brook today.
This part.
I mean, you know, it's a big difference here, folks. We're talking a lot of water. This is the same thing.
So help me understand the perspective here. So where would this tree be in this picture?
This is, let's see, this is this one. Wait a minute, there's another one that matches that one. No, that's sticking out, that's in the field.
Okay.
This one, a different bank of the water. There should be another one like very similar to this one. You can see the midst of it coming out, the tree. It is again, the tree. This is, yeah. Oh, no, this one is on Lake Drive.
Oh,
This is
okay.
it.
All right, so it's a
This is
different
on Lake
location.
Drive,
Okay.
looking towards Lake Drive. And now this is Lake Drive. This is the water going underneath Lake Drive right here. And that's how much water is going out today.
Okay.
And that's what's ending up in that gentleman's yard.
Right. Okay.
8-9 acres is the size of the dome.
I mean, the water is a tremendous problem.
I'm sorry, I don't mean.
It's okay. A lot of times that my property, as I showed you there, the February one, it's underwater. It's actually underwater. And that's what concerns me is about the water coming out, their treatment plants are definitely, I'm so happy to hear that Global is going to be using the water in the facility and using it at the plant. But if they decide not to down the road, where's that water going?
Because the agreement right now is for 3 years.
Excuse me?
The agreement right now.
It's 3 years. Well, I hope I'm in my home more than 3 years, and these folks back there, they'll be in their home more than 3 years.
No, but that's the existing agreement. They just entered into a new agreement to extend that for as long as there is manufacturing.
As long as there's manufacturing.
In the
But I'll
event
go
that-
with Jason over there.
But in the
as
event
long
there
as-
is no
as long as Global's
manufacturing.
there.
No, but in the event there's no manufacturing, then you just decrease the total volume probably by at least 2 million gallons a day. So, you know, there's mitigation
But
in and of
IBM is still going
itself.
to be doing, aren't they still going to be trying to do groundwater?
Right, but instead of
cleaning?
treating 3 million gallons and discharging 3 million gallons, it'll maybe be down to 1 million or less, so.
But if there's no plant, if there's no fab using the water that they're going to be taking out of the groundwater, where is it going to be going?
It's going to go where it goes today. Right now, it goes through the sewer plant after it's used for
The sewer plant
fabrication.
is what goes right into this brook.
Right, as it has for years and years and years.
Yeah, but they're going to be pulling more groundwater off, right?
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're not pulling more ground. It's the same amount of groundwater.
No, there's no change.
But they're
No
building
change.
3, I thought they were building 3 recovery pumps to do
But it's
it.
to treat the same water they're treating today.
So I mentioned, maybe I'll say it one more time.
You're fine.
that Global Foundries worked feverishly with IBM to generate an agreement. It's the thing that I referred to as the letter of intent that we provided to the board that indicates that IBM is going to allow Global Foundries to utilize that 1 million gallons of water a day for their manufacturing purposes. So that's why everybody's making the conclusion or the statement that there's going to be no net increase to the discharge to the brook.
As of today. As of the contract.
As of today, and including when they build the 3 additional
Right.
pumping well.
When they build in 3 additional.
They're going to,
Instead-
even though they're going to be using a different building to pull the water and to treat it, it's still gonna go back into the same manufacturing process that happens today.
I'm relieved to hear
Right.
that Globe
Yep.
is going to be using that water.
Yep.
Because the last board meeting, they were just.
That's correct.
That's right. So
Right.
that's-
We were
I'm just
waiting.
clarifying what I said earlier there.
Right,
Okay.
Thank you.
right.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely. I'm just gonna have you come back to the mic so we can hear you. And thank you.
There was also a rumor in the neighborhood that the Dome will be also using some of the facilities of IBM and Global about their sewer treatment plant, their sewage. Is that possible, or is that just hearsay through the town?
Yes, there's a sewer district that's being formed by the town. John Jay will discharge into it, the Dome will discharge to it, Archway Plaza, and a few other businesses right there.
What about my house? And where is that going to be discharging?
That'll go into the global sewer plant,
So that, and then where is that water going to end up from the Global Sewer Plant?
ultimately to the Gildersleeve.
To my brook,
Yeah.
to our brook.
And
And that's
that's-
going to be increased water flow, I take
And
it.
that's to the tune of about 20,000 gallons a day,
So we actually are going to be gaining at least 20 gallons a day,
20,000 gallons.
20,000 gallons a day.
And
That
just
brook is
keeping in
gonna
mind, in terms of scale,
That's in
right now
comparison
today,
to
they're releasing
millions,
3
yeah.
million gallons a day,
Well,
on average.
I just wonder, this is all
And the
treated
school,
water.
actually, it's not even a change of 20, because the school discharges to the Gildersleeve right now, 7,500 to 17,000 gallons a day right now, so.
Well,
that's already going
I just
there.
wish people would look downstream and see where this water is ending up. It's ending up in people's houses and in their yards. And, maybe it's hindsight right now, but, let's do some foresight here and think about these people and about maybe build a pond or something, put some of this water in,
Okay.
and not just let it run down the Gildersleeve.
Well, in the case of the Dome, they actually made changes on site to route water around Lake City, downstream of Lake City, which we requested as part of that project, so I think that more than offsets the
I'm glad at least
sewage
something's
that they're going to generate.
going out, yeah.
Yeah.
But just think about it, it's not just one homeowners here. There's a lot of people back there whose homes are just destroyed. They're abandoned because of the amount of mold in their homes, and no one can buy them, and they can't do a thing with them. And I just think, the town is not really familiar with what's happening over there. I mean, it is called Lake City for a reason, but when you add more water to it, it's becoming Ocean City now.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I was not laughing, I just.
That's okay.
Can I have you come back up and just, if you can address the water temperature for us? That was something I hadn't heard before.
That,
Yeah.
So the water temperature, there's not hot water being discharged. It may be above freezing during the winter time, but the composition of the water is a third of it is coming from the Hudson River down the 14-mile pipeline. A third of it is coming from the groundwater, which is at an ambient roughly 55 degrees when we pump the 1 million gallons from beneath the site. And then the other third is coming from the remote well fields between 52 and 82, and that's groundwater as well, so that's at an ambient temperature of 55 degrees. When it gets processed through the manufacturing process, it's just turned into DI water for a short period of time. The temperature may increase 2 or 3 degrees, but there's no significant increase to the temperature of the water that's discharged.
And then it's the treatment through the plant itself, the sewer treatment plant, it is also not increasing the temperature of the water, or it
No, not really,
does?
because it's mostly outside treatment facilities. There's large settling basins and then nitrification bays that are all outside, and there's no real significant increase in temperature. So it's generally below 60 degrees.
Okay. But presumably then in the wintertime, it makes sense that you'd see sublimation off the creek if you're putting water that's
Yeah,
above
because-
freezing into a creek that may be starting to ice over, it's going to
Right,
sublimate.
Because 2/3 of that water is coming out of the ground at an ambient 53 to 55 degrees. The only third of the water that comes from the Hudson River is close to the ambient temperature,
Okay.
right? So during the winter, that water is probably close to 50 degrees.
50 degrees all told. Okay.
Maybe come over and take a shower after.
Okay. Is there Is there anyone else that would like to offer comment? Okay.
If I could ask at this time, I'd respectfully like to request that the board consider closing the public hearing.
I'm just about to do that. I just need to check with our professionals and see if they have anything else that they need or that they feel we need to obtain before we could close the public hearing. So I will do that now. Anything
go
that we
first.
need to be able to close the public hearing? Or anything stopping us from closing the public hearing for this application?
I don't think so. I just wanted to bring up a couple of points from the letter that I have touched on, or Martin had the letter for a little while, and it goes back to the last public hearing where people had asked some questions about the ongoing storage and transportation of chemicals around the plant, and one particular building, I think, was mentioned. I didn't see anything in the response, at least to date, that described what kind of safeguards that they have, what kind of provisions there would be for any future cleanup if it was necessary, and kind of who would be on the hook for some of those things if something unexpected happened.
Well, I'd be glad to respond to that.
Okay.
I think Joe's referring to the 303, 304 building, and they're currently regulated by the DOT and the DEC, and I believe there's on-site staff if there was a spill were to occur, but there's also a company that's on a one-hour call service, I believe it's Textron, that would, if there was a spill, would come and take care of that immediately. And again, given that it's regulated by the DEC and DOT, would have to be cleaned up to their satisfaction. So I believe they certainly have global, certainly has enough provisions to handle that kind of contingency.
So does that answer your question, or do you want something specific from the applicant with regard to that?
Well, that sounds like what I was looking for, but I think they should put that in the record and as a response, if they could.
Okay.
Do we need to adjourn the public hearing, or is it sufficient for that to be provided to us?
Yeah, I think it could happen after, but, yeah.
Just to be a little bit more specific, we have an on-site 24/7 emergency response squad that's on staff, that's there to respond to any spills or any incidents on site. And then if it's larger than what they can handle, then we've got Tectron that's available within 1 hour's notice. That's on call for us 24/7. They've got their equipment right there with all the spill cleanup. And I'm happy to report that there's been no significant incidents for the last 10, 15 years.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. So we would just like you to put that into a letter as an addendum to your EAF.
Sure, sure.
Scott, anything else on your end?
No, I'm good.
Michelle, Dave, anything? Okay. All right. Any final questions from board members? Do I have a motion to close the Global Foundries 8-lot subdivision public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And
And I know that Tom isn't here. The resolution is going to have conditions, and we may need some time to prepare those. Michelle, I don't know if you've talked with Tom about this. Is the next meeting, the 16th, sufficient time, or does he need additional
I
time?
haven't had a chance to speak with him about it, and I'm not sure that
I
he's
don't-
even going to be here on the 16th.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you got to go to 6th, yeah.
Tom's not going to be here?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, so if we put this on for decision on September,
We understood he was back on the 8th.
Yeah, but he's got to prepare the resolution. I don't think he's going to be,
We were under the understanding, though, that if we came out of public session tonight, we'd be in shape for the 16th.
Can we consider the 16th, and if Tom's not back, then we defer to the 6th?
I'm fine with that. It's not a public hearing, so we can, but just with the understanding that if it's not ready, we may need to let you know that we've got to move it.
That's fine, but We understood he was back on Monday the 8th.
I know that our town attorney has a lot of responsibility, so I don't want to, I'm not committing his time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna commit his
I
time
don't
either,
mind penciling it in for the 16th, but if he needs an additional time, it would still certainly be within the appropriate response for a determination. Okay?
And would you consider granting preliminary approval at this time, or?
We'll do that in writing. We don't do motions for applications of this size.
Okay.
All right, so we'll put you on for decision on the 16th, again with the understanding that if the attorney doesn't have time to complete the preparation for it, we may need to move you to the 6th.
We'd also, at that time, would also have to close the secret process if that's what's going to happen. We'd have to close the secret process before we could actually do the
neg
decision.
deck,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
On the 16th, if Tom's available, right? Or
Yeah,
does
that can be
depend on
done,
Tom?
it can be done in the same day as the neg deck and the final decision can be done on the same day.
We typically will do them both on the same day. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is an adjourned public hearing for the IBM groundwater remediation, the additional pump stations, new pump stations, I should say, on Route 52. Do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing for the IBM groundwater remediation?
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we heard with the last applicant that you have entered into a letter of intent for the effluent to be used as it is today, but still coming from the new pump stations that you're building.
That is correct.
That's correct? Okay.
At our last public hearing, one of the open questions was the reuse of groundwater. That has been resolved. IBM and Global Foundries have a letter of intent signed by both, and copies been provided to the town.
We appreciate you working that out, both applicants, we appreciate you working that out. I think that's a benefit too, as you're hearing the downstream residents really appreciate not having additional discharge, so that's good. Is there any change to your plan since the last time we saw it?
There is no change to the three groundwater treatment facility locations.
Okay.
The only change is we have added the return water piping on the site plan drawing. So
Okay,
if I could,
sure.
as there.
And all three of your stations, I'm sorry, as we're zeroing in there, all three of these are within a single lot? None of them are encroaching across a lot line?
None of the
Okay.
proposed buildings are straddling any of the lot lines.
Okay. So no change to the location, size, you have your ARB approval for all three
Correct.
buildings. And I'm sorry, you said you did add to the plan, what did you add to the plan? I didn't catch what you said.
If I could just
Sure,
walk
sure.
through the documentation.
Yep.
You have the submittal with the Chazen transmittal letter and the full EAF that covers both the Global Foundries project and the
Yes.
IBM project. In order to, and the full EAF incorporated all the changes for reuse of the water. It addressed reclamation of an equivalent amount of asphalt for the asphalt that was being created at the PW1 site, so it talks about that. I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
And so what we did is we provided a letter to the planning board where we basically itemized each of the elements of that full EAF that we're incorporating into our site plan application. So there's written documentation that says this existing site plan that you have is superseded with these particular items. So
Okay.
there's a paper trail of each of the items.
Okay.
And that includes the drawings, the updated subdivision drawings that was just discussed by Global Foundries with the lot line changes around Lot 5 and the roads. So that new subdivision layout is incorporated in our site plan application. Then there is the new drawing that shows the return water piping for reuse of the water. And then our specific site plans that were included in our application, another level of detail so you can see exactly where that piping is at each one of the locations.
Okay.
The second item that was a sort of outstanding item from the previous public hearing was the question was brought up, could the PW1 treatment building be relocated to another part of the plant where there's already asphalt out there so you don't have to basically remove grass? We did review that with Global Foundries in that location, went through a lot of review and selection because of existing underground utilities. So we want it, and Global Foundries wants us to keep that location as shown. However, there's an agreement with Global Foundries to remove an equivalent amount of asphalt at the plant. The exact location has not been specified, but there was a comment provided by Morris Associates that the location where we're removing asphalt should be in a similar environment and in a close proximity to the PW1 treatment plant. So we will be working with Global Foundries to do that. We would propose that we will be submitting those site plan applications for a building permit that needs to be reviewed by the town engineer and the town's consulting engineer, Morris Associates. So at that point, they would have a chance to comment and see where that asphalt was being removed.
Okay. So no net gain to impervious surface?
No net increase in impervious area, so no changes to surface water runoff from stormwater.
Okay.
We're not going to increase the amount of stormwater coming off the site by building these three separate groundwater treatment facilities.
Okay.
We talked about the reuse already. And I think that pretty much summarizes the changes.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members?
No.
No. Thank you for addressing the impervious surface issue.
Good question.
And for continuing to keep the effluent within the sewer treatment plant. Any, Joe, Scott?
Yeah, just as a side note, I don't think we have a problem having Morris take a look at the net result of the impervious removal. The only thing typically is there's a fee associated with it, and that wouldn't include consulting services, so that would just bill that to that existing escrow that you have. So as long as you're good with that?
Yes, that would be fine, yep.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from professionals before I open for public comment? Okay. Would anyone like to offer public comment? I'm looking at you because I think you may be our only. Oh, I'm sorry, and so and others. You're welcome to come back up.
Okay,
sure.
Margaret Conklin, 19 Locust Lane. Again, I am so much in favor of the subdivision because we do need this. And I'm so happy to see that IBM and Global work together to be able to use the water, and it's not going to be going into the stream. I do have concern, as Jason mentioned, that the outcome down the road, if Global decides not to be producing as much in the fab, that what's going to happen to the water at that point. But maybe that's a bridge we'll have to cross it then. But that's my other question. Does the planning board of the town, are they going to address the issue if it does arise?
But maybe just try to make it a little clearer for you. If they stop the fabrication, that's probably roughly 2 million gallons a day that won't be utilized. It'll only leave you with the remaining 1 million gallons that they're going to continue to treat and discharge. So you'll have a net decrease of 2 million gallons if they stop fab. So that, again, will not increase. It'll actually decrease the amount of water that goes into the Gildersleeve.
But won't the groundwater treatment plant still be going on even if the fab is not in operation?
But it's going on right now, so you have 1 million being treated, or 600,000, whatever the final number is being treated, and you have 2 million being brought in from off-site. So to call it rough number, 3 million gallons today. If they stop fabrication, that takes away the 2 million gallons they're bringing from off-site. It just leaves you with the 1 million gallons that they're treating. So you're going to have a net reduction of about 2 million gallons if they stop the
Stop the
fabrication.
fabrication, of course, but we do not know what usage the other subdivisions are going to be used for. That's something that I'm concerned about down the
The other
road
lot
here.
here, right.
But any
What
of
usage, if they're
those,
going to be using more water, and then that water is going to be going into.
They'll have to go through a site plan process.
Right.
If there's going to be any new or different use of any of these new lots, assuming the new lots occur, they have to go through site plan before they can't just build something because they
Because
got a
that's my
subdivision
concern down the
approval.
road, you know, which I hope there's industry
And-
comes, but, you know, are we going to be concerned about the usage of the water and the disperse of the influent
We'll be
water
concerned
going?
about many things, water not the least of them. Water certainly very important. There's also going to be, you know, reviews for traffic and for view shed and for, I mean, there's a list of usual suspects, and with each application, we look at what is the proposal and what do we think the potential impacts could be. And as a board, we're required to study all of those, and we'll also look to the public for comment to tell us if we're missing something.
All right, thank you very much, thank you. And again, I'm really in favor of this to happen
Okay.
for our community. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your comments with us. Okay, is there anything that stops us from closing the IBM public hearing? Okay, come on back up for us. Any final questions or comments from board members? Okay, do I have a motion to close the IBM groundwater remediation public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And you heard us talk about Tom is on vacation, he's coming back. We can put you on for the 16th, just with the understanding that we may need to move the decision to the 6th.
We would like to be on the 16th
Is that fair
also,
enough?
yes.
Okay, all right. Do I need a motion to schedule the decision, or do I just confirm we're scheduling it? I don't think I need a motion for decision. So we will put you on for the 16th, and again, we'll stay in touch in the event that Tom's not able to complete everything by then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that was the last item on our agenda, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, guys. Have a good evening.